Rob and I's schedule has been crazy lately. We've been pulling so many app based shifts for DoorDash lately to make ends meet and save it for the wedding. We spent every weekend filming to get our horror production company off the ground, too. So it didn't leave us with much time to relax. Things have been stressful lately. A few nights ago, we got a late night ping to deliver some burgers to a weird road called Endicott that was known for a lot of various hauntings. It was a win win situation for us, or so we initially thought. I turned on the radio on low for some background noise while we picked up the food and headed to the location. Rob and I looked over. Rob and I. Sorry. Rob looked over at me with a grin and spoke as we turned on Endicott. You know, as many times as I've been down this way, it still creeps me out. I mean, there's the butcher's house, the witch's steps, the hitchhikers, the ghost car that chases people, and I would swear that trees seem so much closer to the road at night. I just smiled and agreed with him. I know what you mean. It's kind of crazy that so many things happen on one brief stretch of road. There's got to be some seriously bad juju around here for so many things to have happened. Rob, of course, quickly agreed with me. Oh, for sure. I think this address is the caretaker's house at that little cemetery on the road. It's the only graveyard nearby that I can think of where you're allowed to drive through at night. They have this super weird section called Babyland where the children are buried. There's this one grave where there's an actual crib railing that surrounds it. It's creepy as fuck. Well, that's not creepy or anything, I responded with a quick, nervous chuckle. He grinned and patted my knee as we headed down the road. I cranked up the local station and started jamming out to some Bon Jovi. The closer we got to the cemetery, the more the radio crackled, which which made little sense considering we're right in the middle of the station broadcast range. So I figured there was some interference. I checked other stations, but they seemed to be fine. I switched back to the original station since it was the only station I cared for, and put up with the static for a little while longer. We're about a mile from the cemetery when the strangest thing happened. The music just stopped, and there was dead air on the radio. The static crackled and soon gave way to a voice talking. And as the darkness descends upon the lands, there shall come the time of blood. Rob glanced over at me with a raised brow before looking back at the road and commenting, are we listening to some kind of religious station or something? I double checked the radio before responding. No, still on the 104.7 W2 WTUE. Before either of us could say any more, the voice started up again. The Dark Lord shall awaken from the sunken city of Relea when the stars are right. He shall bring us peace through madness and devour the non believers. Raz, I suck at this language. Flui, Mengwa, Cthulhu, Rela, Wagnala, Fung. In the house of Rela did Cthulhu wait streaming. I burst out in laughter. Clearly, someone had a sense of humor. Rob chanced a glance at me and the road as he drove. What's so funny? I couldn't believe you've never heard of the great Cthulhu before. Well, they're talking about Cthulhu. It's this weird old god that looks like a giant fucked up human dragon hybrid creature with tentacles. He's supposed to drive everyone completely insane and looks upon him and eats people pretty much. He's from the Lovecraft mythos. It's huge in geek pop culture. The voice spoke through the never ending static once again. On that day, our loved ones shall be returned to us from death. We shall welcome them in our arms as they usher in the new era. We shall embrace their rotting flesh and cracking bones. All hail our Lord and Savior, the great Cthulhu! The voice was joined by a chorus of others. All hail the great Cthulhu! We were only a few blocks away from the cemetery now. The static was clearing and the closer we got. What we heard next was the strangest thing of all. Soon our chosen sacrifices shall be upon us. Even now they sit in a car having a cigarette just down the road. We shall rend their flesh and spill their blood upon the sacred earth so that Cthulhu may bless us with the ultimate knowledge that only madness can yield. Rob and I looked at each other, terror marring each of our features. We pulled the car over to the side of that old country road. We sat there in silence, just continuing to stare between one another and the radio as the static crackled and seemed to exhibit a life of its own inside the car. Eventually, Rob broke the silence. I am thinking maybe we should turn around and go home, babe. I'll take the hit for the non delivery. I considered his words for a moment. I'm freaked out too, but there has to be a logical explanation for this. We make horror films, for fuck's sakes, man. This kind of stuff just doesn't exist outside of movies. It's probably just someone on cast or crew playing a prank on us. With all the pranks we pull out of them, it wouldn't surprise me. Besides, we really need the extra money right now. Rob sighed and nodded a bit, then started the car and put it in drive as he spoke. Whatever you say, Aaron, just remember, I was against this. Investigating spooky shit gets people killed in the movies. I punched him playfully in the arm as we drove. As we made it through the entrance to the cemetery, a voice came over the radio once more, dissolving the incessant static in its wake. They're close now, brothers and sisters. Ready your weapons and hide where you can. The second we see them, we shall yank them from the car and deliver them unto death. All hail the great Cthulhu! The other voices chimed in once more. All hail the great Cthulhu! Rob applied pressure to the brake, brought us to a stop, and glanced at me nervously. You know, it's not too late to turn back. We can still probably get out of here before something fucked up happens. Let's just go home, watch some Netflix or something. I rolled my eyes at him, pecked him on the cheek. Your cowardice isn't very sexy, Rob. We filmed these sort of things. You'd think this wouldn't be any more than writing fuel for you. Rob raised a brow as he spoke. I like to write spooky shit, not live it. There's a distinction between the two, you realize. I chuckled faintly and responded to him. Come on, don't be such a pussy. We'll do one lap around the place, make sure it's safe, deliver the food, and get the hell out. Rob sighed, took his foot off the brake, shifting into pump the gas gingerly. The static on the radio increased in volume without either of us touching it. I must admit, my heart racing a little at this point. It was like our very own it's like we were getting our very own omniscient soundtrack. We'd made it about a quarter of the way through the graveyard and nothing had happened. The voice hadn't even turned yet. I was just about to point out how hilarious I was suddenly finding the situation to be when something small hit the windshield of our car. It took a few more times for us to realize that someone was throwing pebbles at us. Rob stopped the car again. We looked around through the windows to see if we could spot anyone. There was no one there, with nowhere to go but forward. We started moving it. Now we were just past the halfway mark, and still we'd seen no one. A few more pebbles had hit the windshield by now. But that was about it. Maybe we're just slinging gravel up from the path as we were driving. As unlikely as that seemed, that's what I secretly told myself from to keep me from freaking out. Rob wasn't saying a word, but I could see his knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel, presumably from gripping it so hard. I reached over, put my hand on his shoulder as we continued. Three quarters of the way we 3/4 of the way through, we reached the Babyland section of the that Rob had been talking about earlier. It was just as unsettling as he described it. Everywhere you look, there were cradled statues of once adorable little cherubs and giant statues of angels weeping. I pointed out the statue Rob had once again came to a halt. Whatever you do, don't blink. I got nervous. I got a nervous laugh out of Rob. We were huge fans of Doctor Who and the Weeping Angels and had always been amongst our favorite episodes. The other things about this section of the cemetery were all the toys surrounding the graves. We saw rusted Hot Wheels, old weather-worn teddy bears, corroded Barbie dolls, and even some partially deflated balloons. I'd seen things memor like this at memorials on the side of the road and such. They were nothing compared to the magnitude of what we were seeing right now. Suddenly, a voice overcame the static again. There were the children now, so close. I can see them through the eyes of the angels as we speak. I can see them staring back at me. Rob is terrified, and Aaron seems confused. It won't be long now, my brothers and sisters. They will not escape. All hail the great Cthulhu! And before the chorus of as before, the chorus of voices responded just before the static resumed control. All hail the great Cthulhu! Rob again let go of the brake, hit the gas. This time there was more pressure than before. He wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible, and I easily agreed with his sentiment. Fuck the delivery at this point. We drove about as fast as you could on a narrow gravel path through a cemetery with an unnecessary amount of twists and turns. Finally, the entrance we'd come through was in sight in the distance. We were going to make it out of here, most likely laugh about the scare later. That's when we noticed a big truck entered the graveyard and stopped directly in the entrance. They just sat there as if blocking our way. Headlights came to life from behind us suddenly and almost blindingly, Rob via the reflection from the rearview mirror. They were closing in fast. The voice screeched over the radio in a single word, bursting through the static like Chuck Norris's fist through the chest cavity of his opponent. No! Before long, flowing onyx hooded cloaks began springing from behind gravestones and statues and started running directly at our car. Rob gritted his teeth together, leaned forward, and kept right on driving. He seemed determined to make it out of there. The sounds of metal scraping metal echoed through the night as the cloaked figures jammed their twisted blades. Pardon me, their twisted blades against our car as we passed. By now, my heart was beating so hard that I thought I'd have a heart attack for sure. There had to be at least 30 people trying to surround us, and Rob wasn't showing any signs of stopping. We're driving over graves and weaving through headstones, so he didn't have to sacrifice any speed around the pointless dips and turns. We were getting closer and closer to the truck, blocking the entrance now. I was terrified that we were going to drive right into it. Out of the blue, Rob shrieked, "Hold on!" I made sure my seat belt was secured, gripped the oh shit handle like my life depended on, and squeezed my eyes shut. Whatever he planned to do, I sure as hell didn't want to see it. I could feel the car speeding up, and then I felt that somewhat weightless sensation in my gut as I'm pretty sure all four of our tires left the ground. We came down hard. Our tires squealed as he jerked the wheel so hard that to the left that my head smacked against the window. I opened my eyes slowly and shook off the daze and noticed we were on the road in front of the cemetery now, hauling ass. I turned around in my seat to look behind us. The huge ass truck and three cars were giving chase. I reached over to squeeze Bob's shoulder as a voice again filtered through the static. Don't let them get away, brothers and sisters. Follow them to their home if you must. Our ritual depends on it. As a series of horn blasts truncated the voice before the stag forced its way back into control, tears streamed down my face as I cried to Rob, we can't go home, Rob. They'll kill us. We need to get somewhere safe. The truck was in the lead of those behind us and sped up to the point its fender slammed against our bumper as our car jerked. Rob pushed the pedal down till it bottomed out. We were zipping down a back road faster than I'd ever been in a car before. I'd seen a lot of car chases on TVs and the movies. Hell, we'd even filmed a few, but none of us prepared me for the living one. The tension in the car was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. Rob took a last minute turn so hard we damn near slid off the road into a tree. I looked around and realized we were back on Endicott again. Great, just what I needed at this point. The truck had been going too fast to make the turn, but the three cars had been behind it were still in hot pursuit. We flew past the witch's steps, cracked and stained with the blood of legends. I could vaguely see the estranged hitchhiker as his thumb up on the side of the road and didn't even seem phased as we powered on. Rob took another turn without warning, and we destroyed a mailbox through the power slide to get back to the pavement. Two of the cars didn't make it, but the third remained right on our tail. The voice cut through the static again violently. Pull back and rejoice, brothers and sisters. We have their license plate number and can easily track them down from that. We shall have them, mark my words. Their end is nigh. The static died altogether. Normal radio station removed its broadcast. It's the end of the world as we know it by REM. Rob slowed his pace to just 5 miles over the speed limit, and we kept driving in silence. We got about halfway home before he pulled over in a well-lit Walmart parking lot. There was a decent amount of people around for about 1 in the morning, which made me feel a little more comfortable. Rob looked over at me. His face had completely gone pale by now. He whispered as if still trying to find his voice. I don't know what to do, Aaron. We can't go home. He was right, and I knew it. I unbuckled my seatbelt and moved to bring him in a warm embrace as we swapped together. We stayed right there in the parking lot until the sun came up, too afraid to do or go anywhere else. Luckily, we didn't have classes today, so we called off work to figure out what to do. We killed some time in Walmart till we could start making some phone calls. We conned Scott into meeting us at the house where there was no way we were going there alone. It was a pretty lively neighborhood during the day, being close to the student housing for UD. When we arrived, we noticed a strange symbol burnt into our front lawn. I immediately recognized the fabled symbol of the cult of Cthulhu. We took some time filling Scott in on what we experienced. He seemed just as shocked as we were. We stocked up on some weapons, invited a few friends over under the guise of an all-night horror movie marathon, and waited for something to happen. So far, nothing crazy happened. Occasionally, I still hear the static over the radio on WTUE in weird places, but no more voices. We've since stopped doing late night deliveries just to be safe, but something tells me we haven't seen the last of them. If you're doing app based delivery jobs, be careful out there and remember, you're only ever one burger away from oblivion.